Hello and welcome back to the very first episode of Kapow for 2015. I'm Sonia.
And I'm Al. I am excited to be back in King's Comics for the new year. I feel like there should be streamers or a marching band or something.
I don't think we could actually fit a marching band in
Maybe
here.
like a small band, and they'd probably have to march in place. Yeah, we could at least get a small guy with a kazoo doing circuits around the new releases.
So your New Year's resolution was to be slightly weirder than last year.
Yeah, it's the same resolution every year, you know that.
It is true. And another thing that is the same every year is a cavalcade of awesome new comics to look at. We're going to start off with reviews of the new Star Wars comic, the comic adaptation of Wolf Among Us, and Boom Studios' new title, Feathers.
We're also going to have longtime Kapowian Ray Johnston in to tell us her most anticipated games for 2015, and I believe she's going to stick around to chat with Ray about a new Wonder Woman figurine that she's thinking of buying.
And last, but by no means least, we'll be checking out the hardcover edition of Veil.
So stay glued to your seat for all the pop culture awesomeness that is headed your way. And if you know any diminutive kazoo players, then please contact us through Facebook.
Seriously, what is your obsession with the kazoo?
The kazoo is a hugely underappreciated instrument.
Aw, just like you.
Thanks.
We're almost a month into 2015 and it's a special time of year when you suddenly realise that you're never going to use that gym membership you signed up for on the 1st of January in a fit of resolution panic.
That's right. But on the upside, there are a whole host of new comics coming out. And what better way to forget about that direct debit going out every month to Fitness R Us than to sit down with a comic, have a good read, and possibly a massive slice of cake.
Yes. The first new series we're going to take a look at will be unfamiliar to exactly nobody. Star Wars Issue 1 from Marvel is written by Jason Aaron with art by John Cassaday and has been either anticipated or dreaded by fans since its announcement.
Thankfully, it appears there was nothing to worry about. Aaron shoehorns this story into the timeline between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and it is in every aspect a faithful addition to the series.
Yeah, it does feel like it could have been a section cut from the scripts from the original trilogy, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that is a tough trick to pull off. But Aaron is really nailing the feel of these characters, to the point where you can hear Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford's voices, and you just know that Imperial Overseer Agadeen has a British accent.
The visual likenesses rendered by Cassaday are also faithful to the actors, without falling into the uncanny valley, and Laura Martin's colours mesh with the slightly grubby tones we remember from the original trilogy.
Beyond all that, though, it's the overall tone of this comic that makes it work. There's just that right mix of humour, action, and wow, that was cool moments. Not to mention all the variant covers. Even King's has their very own, which is very cool. I love this one. I'm going to give it a buy.
Well, for me, it's going to have to be a borrow. There's nothing wrong with this comic. It's a really good, strong start to the series. It's just, I'm not a really big Star Wars fan, and so its faithfulness to the original was just like a teensy bit of a drawback for me.
And yet somehow we remain friends.
I know.
You know what? Sit in the corner and think about what you've done. Fine. No, wait. Moving on. We come to another adaptation.
Yes.
But this time a comic adaptation of a game adaptation of a comic. Fables, The Wolf Among Us, is a retelling of the Telltale Games series of the same name, written by Matthew Sturgis and Steve Justice, with art by Steve Sadowski, Sean McManus, and Travis Moore.
For those unfamiliar with the game, The Wolf Among Us jumps back in time to tell a story from Bigby Wolf's hard-boiled past as Fabletown's only sheriff. The story starts off strong with Bigby confronting his old nemesis, the Woodsman, and continues by introducing a variety of bit players from the Fable universe.
The print edition features 3 segments which were released separately in digital format, with the 3 artists taking turns throughout. Thankfully, this leaves you with a sense of visual variety rather than feeling inconsistent as Bigby slouches his way through this twisted mystery.
At the end of the day, this is a good spin-off from Fables, but I have read better. It's a fine issue number 1, but I didn't love it, so I'm only going to give it a borrow.
Fair enough. Well, I'm going to get a bit awkward on this one and actually give it 2 separate ratings.
No, that's cheating.
Depending on who's reading it.
Loopholes.
Love a loophole. Now, if you haven't played the game and you don't intend to play the game, then I'm going to give this one a buy.
Okay.
It's a good story and it's well rendered. However, if you have played the game or you intend to play the game, then I'm going to give it a berry.
Ooh.
Because in spite of the author's note at the end, which goes on about expanding on the story that was in the game and adding on to it. This first issue shows no evidence of that happening.
Yeah. And finally, we come to an all-ages title from Boom Studios. Written by Jorge Corona, who also does duty on artwork alongside Jen Hickman, Feathers is the story of a small boy who seems to be half raven, and whose name, appropriately enough, is Poe.
The opening narration, by two unseen figures representing order and chaos, introduces us to a sprawling slum known as the Maze, and to the shining, perfectly symmetrical city beyond. The comment on social inequality is clear, but not heavy-handed. Instead, the focus is on Poe, who spends his days leaping unseen among the rooftops, tormenting the city guards.
And also on Bianca, a little girl who lives in the White City, dreaming of adventure to shake up the ordered monotony of her life. This first issue is mainly about setting up the background and the major characters, so the shape of the story is still yet to be seen. But the artwork, that's phenomenal.
I knew you'd like the art. It's at its best for me during those segments in the maze, just so beautifully cluttered and chaotic.
Yeah, but that's kind of the point that Hickman and Corona are making. The maze is fascinating but dangerous, and the city is safe but tedious. I think that's represented perfectly, and it sets the stage for a really lovely story. I'm going to give this one a big old buy. I thoroughly enjoyed this one, although I may wait for the trade so I can read it all in one hit.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I really love seeing a nicely rounded, all-ages title come out. I think Poe and Bianca will be a fantastic odd couple team-up, and there's just enough Dickensian darkness to make this story pop. I'm going to give it a buy as well.
Awesome, so it looks like 2015 is shaping up for pretty good year for comics.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and be aware, now we have the Kapow Instagram account up and running, we will be able to bring you one-shot reviews with the greatest of ease. Welcome back, Ray, for 2015. Great
Thanks
to
for
have
having
you.
me.
Always a pleasure. Now, 2015 is going to be a massive year, especially for games.
Yes.
Very exciting year for games.
It is.
Now, you being our resident games guru, we thought we'd get you along to tell us. You can do a bit of that if you like. But first, we need you to tell us your most anticipated games of 2015.
My top 5
Top
at this
5.
very point in time.
Exactly right.
Starts with Batman Arkham Knight. Now, while we were toiling away on Arkham Origins, Rocksteady is back. They have been working on Batman Arkham Knight
That whole time.
the whole time, so it's bound to be glorious.
Oh, yes.
Also back, Kevin Conroy as Batman.
The one true voice of Batman.
The only person who should ever be voicing Batman.
Absolutely.
We've also got Troy Baker as Arkham Knight.
Cool.
And we have Nolan North as the Penguin. Story-wise,
Yep.
it's kind of set a year after Arkham City. So you've got Batman, or Bruce Wayne, recovering from the events with
Yes,
the
the
Joker.
events. We won't go any further than that.
No
Play
spoilers.
the game. Yep.
There's DLC from Harley Quinn. There's
Cool.
DLC with Red Hood, so it gives you a bit story-wise. Gadgets with Batman are going in the opposite direction to they're going with 007 in movies.
More
He's just
gadgets.
getting more of them.
Gear up.
Getting more of them and running all over the place with them, which is amazing. There's
Yep.
new combat moves. He can take down 3 enemies at once if you're stealthy. He gets around by gliding more effectively. And the Batmobile.
The Batmobile.
You can drive the Batmobile.
Tooling around Gotham.
And it looks like a tank.
It does, but a tank that can go sideways and a tank that shoots Batman.
No matter what weapon, anything you have shoots, nothing can beat a tank that shoots Batman.
Rock, scissors, paper. Well, I have a tank that shoots Batman.
That pretty much
Beats everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Most definitely.
Awesome, good pick.
Next on the list is Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. I'm a massive fan of the Uncharted series.
Yeah.
This one is set a couple of years after Uncharted 3. Drake has been dragged out of retirement, kicking and screaming
No
by
doubt.
the lure of pirate treasure in Madagascar.
Well, that'd do it for me.
Yeah, what else would get you out of bed in the morning other than Madagascan pirate treasure? Huh?
Absolutely. I
So-
can't think of much. Yeah.
That pirate booty, it
Gotta
gets
love
you
it.
up in the morning. So, of course, this is along the trail of Francis Drake, because is there anywhere that he didn't go?
He got around a lot.
He
Yeah,
really, really
He
did.
He's a bit of a globetrotter.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I was a little bit concerned about with this game actually was the team kind of dropped out along the way of the development, which is usually a bit of a red flag. But they've brought on the game directors from The Last of Us, which was my game of the year for 2013.
Yeah, as it was with many others.
Restored a lot of faith.
Game.
And I find Naughty Dog a pretty rock solid bet when it comes to games.
Yeah, it tends to be.
They haven't let me down yet. And if there's one thing that they do really well, it's those beautiful cinematic scenes.
Absolutely, just those organic cinematic moments that happen in those games. You're tooling along, you're shooting things, all of a sudden something amazingly cool happens, just not in a cutscene, just as part of the game. And they do that so well.
They really do. And they do characters so well, and environments, and the detail, and just the gorgeousness of the game in general. So Uncharted 4, definitely on my radar.
You've got a solid bet there.
2015. Now, the next one is a little bit different.
Okay.
Until Dawn.
Until Dawn.
Until Dawn is in my favourite genre of games. Everything's my favourite today. But, this is my top 5 favourite. Adventure survival horror.
Oh, survival horror creeps
me. I love
me.
the cringing. I love the cringing.
I can't deal with it.
It's a classic story. You've got 8 teenagers in a cabin in the woods.
I can see where this is going. On
the anniversary of a friend's death. And there is a serial killer.
Awesome.
Are you shocked?
Not shocked. It wasn't completely out of the blue.
Now, one of the interesting things about this game, though, is you can play as each of the teenagers involved in this game. So it's third person, and it really seems from the footage that we're seeing that they're getting the jump scares and suspense and the environment
Gotta
right.
have that, yeah.
They've got a couple of really cool indie horror writers on board for it, and they've got some good voice acting too. There's Hayden Panettiere involved. Cool. So yeah, it's looking to be pretty interesting.
And this one is, this came from a crowdfunding project, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely, which actually makes me have a little bit more faith in it. Sure. I find if something's produced by a big studio backed by a big evil corporation,
and they're all evil. If movies have taught us nothing else.
They're more likely to kind of rush through things and not really have the care and attention to detail.
I can see that. This is more likely to be a passion project, something people really care about.
And when you've got that fan base that feels like they own a part of it, I feel like
have demands.
It's going to push you that little bit further to make them happy.
That makes sense.
So, yeah.
It's a bit different, should be good, yeah.
Now, No Man's Sky, it's not just an open world game, it's an open universe
That's
game.
ambitious.
If you can see it, you can go to it. You're exploring absolutely everything. You're going to different worlds, you're seeing different species. You're vulnerable on these planets
Good, because you need some conflict.
Anyone that has read Ready Player One, this is what I imagine the Oasis to be. So when you're going around to these different worlds, because you are vulnerable, because you need to have to work out how to survive, you're collecting resources, you're building ships, you're building up your suits. It's kind of an MMO-esque sort of style of game.
So you're going to be tooling around with other people, but it seems like you're going to have a lot of space to do that. So
there is a lot of space in No Man's Sky. The gameplay that we're seeing coming out of it is just stunning.
Okay.
It is gorgeous. It's one of those games where it could go either way. This could be incredible, and we could all be talking about this for years to come.
And this could be one of those defining games.
Or it could be an overhyped massive failure. Yeah. Either way.
You don't want those overpromise, underdeliver. That can happen. But hopefully that will not be the case here.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed that does not happen.
Yeah.
But next up, in my top 5, is The Rise of the Tomb Raider.
Yes!
I don't know why this is appropriate, but somehow it is.
It absolutely is. You're rising.
Now, this is the sequel to the reboot, which was enormously popular and one of my favourite games out of 2013. If The Last of Us didn't come out, it would have been Tomb Raider.
Fair enough too.
For me,
amazing game.
Hands down. I loved the story with Lara there. I loved the vulnerability and the character development and everything.
Great way, slow burn build of a character done so well.
And not only was it beautifully detailed, you know, you ramp those PC specs right up and you just watch the wind flowing through her hair. You can almost feel it on your face. It was just gorgeous.
You shoot somebody with a bow and arrow.
The combat was fantastic.
It was
great,
yeah.
So building on that is a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a good thing, right?
It has to be.
It has to be a good thing. And the thing that they're focusing on more this time, because they're listening to fans, which is a good sign, more tombs.
because that was the main criticism, wasn't it, on the previous one, the reboot. It's, I mean, everything else was cool, but the tombs, they weren't really tombs, they were rooms.
They were rooms.
She was a room raider.
Less rooms.
She would just go into
More
a room,
tombs.
throw some things on another thing, climb up a thing, and then
climb
leave.
up a thing. Yeah, yeah.
And that was a bit of a letdown. But if they can get that right and keep everything else as good as it was in the first one,
Yeah,
I'm sold.
definitely.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're hoping to see. So that is why it made my top 5 most anticipated games for this year.
and God knows she didn't want to just stop at the 5.
No,
that was-
they made me narrow it down to 5.
I think, well, you started
Kapow
at 20.
evil.
We had to chop it down. We only have a certain amount of time. But look, thank you for coming in. Those are some excellent games to be looking forward to. It's going to be a great year for games. And I'm sure we'll probably have you in again when some more crop up and you go, no, I need to do it again.
Yeah.
There's a whole new list of 5 now.
This is totally subject to change. I'm going to come back in a month or so and go, I've got 5 more.
We won't even invite her next time. She'll just bust straight in.
I'll go, guys, I'm doing a segment. Hi, Ray.
Hey Ray, hey guys. Was that weird?
Well, it is now,
You're okay with it?
with my name,
Well, maybe you can be RJ.
so that you're not confused.
Yeah.
You do realise your last name starts with a J too, right?
Yes.
Should I buy this Wonder Woman statue or not?
Let's break it down. It's by Kapow and it's part of their Artifacts line. Based on a Jim Lee art style, she's a 6th scale figure standing roughly 30 centimeters tall. Her costume is a modern twist that also embraces elements of her debut appearance in 1942. The most notable feature of this figure is the large cape flowing all around her. Let's start with what you like about this piece.
Well, I think she looks great. She's a good size, and there's a lot of detail in the sculpt.
Yeah.
The creasing of her costume, the flow of her hair, and the waves in the cape. It prevents the piece from looking too flat, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I like that the costume looks a little like armour too. After the awful New 52 Artifacts Plus Wonder Woman statue and the underwhelming Wonder Woman Bishojo statue released last year, this is a welcome sight. The colours are rich and the gold has a nice metallic finish.
The paintwork on this particular piece is solid too.
Yes.
The shading in the cape, the way that it frames her figure, it almost serves as a backdrop and it gives her a real sense of royalty.
Aesthetically, I agree, but it doesn't make sense to me. The cape is huge and it just looks so heavy. Kotobuk's description of the piece is, Wonder Woman stands ready for battle in a dynamic pose, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. No. No, not with that cape, and not in that pose. Look, it's not that I can't imagine her unpinning it swiftly and flying into the fray, or that I dislike the pose either. It's just that it doesn't say battle ready. Instead, it's a bit of the opposite. I think it's quite feminine, which I prefer. I also favour the skirt over the leotard, which maintains a sense of modesty, while the split up the side is both a little sexy and seems practical, should she need to kick someone in the face rather than the ankle. Finally, what do you think about the head sculpt?
Thankfully, they didn't ruin her face.
Yes.
It's soft, but it's also strong. The eyes are even and they're well shaped and they're not looking cross-eyed in some sort of strange middle distance glare. It's a strong gaze. She's got a sense of purpose about her. I really like it.
My niggle here is that the crown or tiara is a little on the heavy side, as though it's the reason for her slightly furrowed brow. So what's holding you up? It sounds like you really like this piece.
I do, but my cabinet at home is full.
Right.
So if I take this one home, I have to buy a new cabinet and find a home for it as well. So
Okay.
I just kind of wanted to see if you thought it was worth it.
Bottom line, it is. But I have seen some more dynamic pieces out there, though the sculpts aren't as impressive and the depictions of character, well, they aren't really up to scratch. At the same time, this isn't the iconic Wonder Woman piece, but it is one of the best out there. And I think it's also a really good interpretation of her character. So overall, I'm going to give it a borrow.
I'm going to give it a buy, somewhat
Okay.
predictably. It's not just because I'm a fan, though. Look,
good.
I think this is a really cool depiction of Wonder Woman. I love her costume. I want to make this, so I'm going to need this as a reference.
Yep.
I love the little piecing in her hair, the shading on the cape, and also Wonder Woman's only going to gain in popularity. This isn't just my prediction. It's going to happen. She's
Yep.
got a film coming out in a couple of years.
True.
I think it's a good investment as a collector's piece.
Cool. Oh, we forgot to review the plane.
Well, it's easy to forget.
It's a joke. There is no invisible jet plane.
Isn't there?
As far as opening scenes go, having an amnesiac protagonist is an effective way to involve the reader. They get to discover the main character's identity at the same time they do, so they feel a connection. It could be asked though, since we've seen this done a fair few times before, is there a new way to do it?
Well, the creative team of Greg Rucka and Tony Fajula would answer that question with a definitive yes. Recently released in hardcover by Dark Horse, Veil is a creator-owned title that tells the story of the eponymous Veil, a young woman who wakes up naked and alone on a disused subway platform.
Well, alone that is, apart from a swarm of rats. Is swarm the right collective noun for rats?
Yeah, you can also use pack, or colony, or plague.
You know some weird stuff.
Yeah. Veil, however, seems to know nothing as she staggers out into the city, mumbling rhymes to herself as she tries to figure out who she is, confused and wondering as if everything she sees is new to her. And it's not long before she starts to draw all the wrong sorts of attention.
It's an interesting theme of this story that Veil, for all of her later revealed power, is seen as a commodity by almost every man she comes in contact with, something to be possessed and used. The only exception being a young man named Dante, whose name, considering the content of this book, cannot be an accident.
Yeah, it is true though. From the street thugs she first encounters, to a cop who tries to force himself on her, to the bosses of a multinational corporation and a very creepy occultist called Cormac, everyone wants something from Veil, and this story is very much about her trying to find freedom.
And you want her to find that freedom, regardless of who or what she turns out to be. Veil has this placid tranquility about her, even when she's using her mind powers to make someone shoot themselves in the head. There's a wide-eyed innocence to her character that I think owes a lot to Fajula's artwork.
Yeah, and the artwork is outstanding throughout. I mean, taken apart from the story, the art alone is enough to make you want to pick up this book. The composition of every panel is so well considered and compelling, as are the colour choices. And one of the great things about this hardcover edition is that you get a series of pencil-drawn images in the back, any of which I would be happy to tear out and hang on my wall.
Yeah, you can't fault the artwork. It's completely individual, kind of like a stained glass window under a thin layer of grease. You can just take a lot of time just taking it all in.
Yeah, there's so much to love about this book, and I'm really hoping of a continuation, as is hinted in the final few panels. Veil is looking for her freedom, and I am really keen to find out what form that freedom will take. This is definitely a big buy from me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not flawless. At 5 issues, I felt like sometimes the story could be a little bit rushed.
Sure.
I would have liked a bit more time developing some of the characters. Cormac, in particular, I would have liked to have known more about. He's kind of like a less moral John Constantine.
Yeah.
That said, it's still a buy from me. It's a great book that you'll be well served to check out.
And that is all she wrote for this inaugural 2015 episode of Kapow. We hope it was all you ever hoped for.
And how could it not be? As always, guys, remember to keep in contact with us through the Book of Face, the comments of YouTube, and Twitter.
Yeah, it's really hard to make Twitter sound like something that an RPG character would say.
Yeah, and that's its main failing, to my mind.
But the point does stand that we would love to know what you're reading, what you think of what we're reading, and what you think we should read next.
And what you think of the kazoo as a solo instrument.
Right. Until next time, guys.
Bye.
Bye.